The man had told her to follow the shadow, and they haven't been seen since.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 unsolvable crimes that were actually solved.
After months of trailing him, it was DNA collected from a pizza slice he tossed in a Manhattan trash can.
Number 10. The Disappearance of Paulette Jaster. On May 12, 1979, Paulette Jaster left her parents' home in Davison, Michigan and disappeared without contact. For more than 30 years, her family remained clueless on her whereabouts. Meanwhile, over 1,000 miles away in Houston, Texas, officials sought to identify a hit-and-run victim from March 1980 without any DNA or dental x-rays on file. This Jane Doe remained nameless until January 2014, when forensic anthropologist Sharon Derrick cracked the case. Autopsy pictures of the unidentified victim showed 3 distinctive freckles on her cheek. After receiving an online tip, Derrick contacted Jaster's family and was able to match the freckles with her childhood pictures, confirming Jane Doe's identity as the long-lost Jaster. Number 9. Texas crime solved by America's Most Wanted. A crime in Rollingwood, Texas would have probably gone unsolved if not for an eerie coincidence. In May 1992, a cook at the Green Parrot Cafe in Salt Lake City, Utah was killed in a robbery gone wrong. After the suspect jumped bail, the case was featured on a 1993 episode of America's Most Wanted. Many of the employees and patrons of the Green Parrot gathered at the cafe to watch the segment. Coincidentally, the subsequent segment featured a case in Rollingwood, Texas, whose runaway suspect turned out to be Kenneth Lovesey, the replacement cook hired after the former chef was killed. Lovesey was still in the kitchen flipping burgers when the police were called in to arrest him. Number 8. The Case of David Guy. In July 2012, the remains of David Guy, a Hampshire, England resident, were discovered on a beach. Guy had been murdered, wrapped in a curtain and dumped there, presumably by his killer. Despite an initial lack of evidence, a breakthrough emerged when police discovered 8 cat hairs on the curtain. This proved to be their smoking gun, as David Hilder, one of Guy's neighbors who owned a cat, became a prime suspect.
Tinker's profile, the suspect's cat, shared its profile with around about 2% of the UK population.
Mitochondrial DNA analysis confirmed a match between hairs from Hilder's cat and those obtained at the crime scene. Hilder was subsequently convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to life imprisonment, marking the first instance cat DNA was used in a British criminal trial. Number 7. The Son of Sam. Dubbed the Son of Sam, David Berkowitz killed 6 people and wounded 7 others in 1970s New York. His seemingly random spree baffled investigators until a parking violation led to his arrest after months of eluding police. In July 1977, Berkowitz drove to Brooklyn for what would be his final murder, but was issued a ticket after parking illegally.
David Berkowitz, 24 years old, a postal worker, walked out of his Yonkers apartment last night, turned the ignition key in his car, and found himself surrounded by police.
Cecilia Davis, a local resident who was walking her dog that night, witnessed the ticket being issued and later encountered Berkowitz with what looked like a gun in his hand. Moments later, she heard the gunshots that claimed his final victim. Davis reported the encounter to the police, who traced the ticket to Berkowitz's car and arrested him just outside his house. Number 6. Finnish car theft. Mosquitoes are often viewed as vectors of the deadly disease malaria. But when a car was stolen in Lapua, Finland in 2008, it was a mosquito that helped police identify the suspect. The stolen car was found abandoned near a railway station, roughly 15 miles from where it was taken. Inside the vehicle, police discovered a mosquito that appeared to have recently sucked blood. They carefully collected the insect and sent it to a laboratory for analysis. The test results revealed a match between the blood in the mosquito and that of a man in the police register. Although the suspect denied the allegations, claiming to have only hitchhiked in the car, he was arrested by police. Number 5. Steve Carter solves his own disappearance. What would you do if you found your picture on a missing person site? For Steve Carter, that wasn't just a hypothetical. In 2010, Carter, who was adopted as a child, embarked on a search for his roots. This led him to a missing children's website, where astonishingly, he found an age progression image of himself. Carter contacted the police and took a DNA test, which confirmed that he was Marks Panama Moriarty Barnes, who had been missing since 1977. Barnes was taken by his birth mother and ultimately ended up in an orphanage in Hawaii.
This is Steve Carter at 34 years old. Their birthdays, one day apart, Their birthplaces identical.
The case probably would have remained unsolved if not for Carter's own curiosity, which reunited him with his birth family after more than 3 decades.
He introduced himself over the phone, and I was absolutely positively thunderstruck and amazed, and we just sort of, in an hour conversation, tried to catch up on 32 years.
Number 4, the cold case of Susan Schwartz. For over 30 years, the 1979 shooting death of Susan Schwartz at her Washington home puzzled detectives. A major breakthrough came in 2011 when an inmate saw Schwartz's face on a cold case card and called police with a tip. The inmate recalled a man named Gregory Johnson confessing to the murder. This tip led police to a witness who admitted to being present at the scene when Johnson took Schwartz's life.
The inmate's tip led police to the 57-year-old suspect.
She had been threatened to prevent her from coming forward with her testimony. Apparently, Schwartz was a friend to Johnson's wife and had helped her leave him after repeated cases of domestic violence. Johnson was arrested based on the witness's testimony and dealt a 24-year prison sentence. Number 3, the kidnapping of Monica Judith Bonilla. In 1983, Nylene Marshall was abducted during a family picnic at the Helena National Forest in Montana. Her disappearance garnered significant attention and was featured on the NBC series Unsolved Mysteries 7 years later.
Some of the children playing near Nylene told her they remembered seeing a strange man dressed in a jogging suit.
After the episode aired, authorities received a call from a viewer who believed he had seen Marshall. When the tip was investigated, police discovered that the girl was not Marshall. Instead, she was Monica Judith Bonilla, who had been kidnapped in 1982 by her non-custodial father.
These phone calls were coming from the Madison, Wisconsin area, as were letters that he was sending. The FBI, to my understanding, had actually located the phone booth.
Bonilla's mother had spent about $20,000 searching for her, to no avail. She was reunited with her daughter after 8 long years. Sadly, the mystery behind Nylene Marshall's disappearance remains unsolved. Number 2, the disappearance of Don Sanchez. Sometimes criminal cases get so out of this world that investigators have to call on NASA to help solve them. Don Sanchez disappeared on August 30th, 1991 after leaving a motel in the car of her boyfriend, Bernardo Bass. Despite a witness alleging that Bass had killed Sanchez in his car, a lack of evidence led to the case being dismissed. Nearly 2 decades later, police got information that Bass's car was possibly buried in an abandoned lot. Due to cost constraints, they turned to NASA for help. Using an underground magnetic rover, they were able to unearth vehicular parts that matched Bass's car and found evidence that Sanchez's body had been there. Bass ultimately pleaded no contest to manslaughter and received a 6-year prison sentence. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, the Golden State Killer. Between 1974 and 1986, hundreds of lives were affected by the actions of the Golden State Killer.
I loved my father dearly, and he took him away from me.
The then unidentified individual was responsible for 13 murders, as well as dozens of assaults and burglaries. After 1986, however, the killer's reign of terror came to an end, and the case grew cold.
He outsmarted everybody for 40 years.
It would take the persistent efforts of investigators and crime writer Michelle McNamara to identify the culprit. By 2018, DNA technology had advanced enough for police to trace evidence from the crime scenes to former police officer Joseph James D'Angelo. D'Angelo had stopped killing and transitioned to normal life as a truck mechanic before he was arrested in April 2018. He was sent behind bars for the rest of his natural life.
Really sorry to everyone I've hurt.